U.S. defense officials say this is the real deal. Russia test firing its new high-speed hypersonic missile, a missile that the U.S. military currently cannot defend against. Russian President Vladimir Putin pulling no punches on his intent.
The new avant-garde missile system is invincible against today's and future air and missile defense systems of the potential enemy. This is a big success and a great achievement.
If the weapons work as advertised, there is no current defense against them.
The Russian missile has captured the attention of Patrick Shanahan, the Deputy Defense Secretary, who will take over as acting Pentagon chief when Secretary James Mattis leaves next week. Shanahan warns the U.S. needs to be able to detect the fast-flying missile much further away than current radar systems can handle. The U.S. has to detect it thousands, not hundreds of miles away because of its high-speed approach. The Pentagon may spend more than $1 billion trying to develop and field its own capabilities.
We have a number of options going on with hypersonic missiles.
The Russians are making significant yet unproven claims about their missiles, saying it's capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. It flies up to 20 times faster than the speed of sound. It can adjust altitude and direction to avoid detection. Putin says it's invincible.
We're going to need a different set of sensors in order to see the hypersonic threats. Our adversaries know that.
The challenges are also political for President Trump, whose relationship with Russian President Putin has been rocky since July's Helsinki summit.
Putin feels incredibly emboldened. Putin believes this is the time to press his advantage. He's put his forces in Ukraine, in eastern Ukraine. He's, of course, taken over Crimea. He's now gaining ground in Syria. This is Russia's time, in his view.
Now, because the Russians are putting so much effort into this new missile, the U.S. is responding by funding its own effort. The Pentagon says it has no choice but to proceed.
Yeah, let's take a look at it, Ryan. It's called the avant-garde missile system, and it's called a system because what we're really talking about here is a hypersonic glider that you put on top of an ICBM to launch it into space and then get it closer to your target. Flies about 20 times the speed of sound. Some estimates have it up at Mach 27, incredibly fast, can carry a nuclear warhead. And the real scary thing about this is that as it closes in on its target, it can independently zig and zag and to avoid missile defenses. The Pentagon, for their part, they are still working on hypersonic systems of our own, but it doesn't look like we're going to have a hypersonic system in development, or at least in the field, for at least 2 to 4 years from now. So the Russians are ahead of us on this. The other problem with this missile system is that our radar systems, according to the acting Secretary of Defense, Patrick Shanahan, are not strong enough, not capable enough of detecting it far enough away because of the speed. So this is a real worry, and it's got the Pentagon planners, I'm sure, working very, very hard. There's another system, an underwater system that the Russians are working on and that Putin has been bragging about. It's called the Poseidon. It is a nuclear powered, that's right, it's a torpedo with a nuclear reactor in it that can also carry nuclear warheads. It is very long range, up to about 6,000 miles. It can travel at depths of up to 3,000 feet, and it's very fast. Somewhere the estimates are between 55 and 100 knots, 55 to 100 miles an hour underwater. The idea for this weapon is to go after large ships like aircraft carriers or shore installations. And again, this is not a system for which we have adequate defenses right now. Very worrisome. This is in testing right now, not in the fleet, not as far along as the avant-garde. Now look, the Russians have also been doing a lot of military buildup and increasing their capabilities throughout the whole year. Back in March, they tested a new intercontinental ballistic missile called the Satan II, which can carry up to 26 independently targeted warheads, re-entry vehicles, if you will, 10 of them of a large size. In September, back in the fall, they did war games with China. Now, these war games in the East have typically been done to deter China. They've been about sort of making sure China knew not to mess with Russia. This year, they worked with China to send a message to the West and to the United States in particular. Back in October, of course, they've now using satellite imagery, we've been able to tell they've been upgrading military installations in Kaliningrad on the Baltic Sea, right on the doorstep of NATO. And then in November, they tested a satellite system called the Nesting Doll. Now, what's really interesting about this is not so much the actual satellite itself, but the little satellite that comes out that it puts into space outside of it. Now, the Russians will tell you this is about being able to work on satellites, that this little guy is meant to go fix and repair other satellites that they have in orbit, but the Pentagon is worried that what it could be is actually a targeting mechanism to go after Western satellites, either with lasers or maybe even to crash into them. So the Russians have been very busy this year. This is going to be certainly on the plate of Pentagon planners and the new Secretary of Defense, whoever that ends up being, well into 2019.